dag nabbit, gosh dang, what in heckin' tarnation, darn it all to heck. This is a video about words you can't say. You know them, but you can't say them. Well, actually, you can say them, but there's consequences. We're talking about taboo words. Buckle up, because this is going to be a wild ride, and we will cover everything from accidentally summoning bears to foghorn leghorn, from Zulu kinship terms to swear words, from the N-word to names for the divine. Oh, and of course, forking shirt balls.
Somebody royally forked up. Why can't I say fork?
This is one of my favorite topics in linguistics because it's so intense and emotionally powerful and social. It's where the social world actually creates linguistic change. It's not changes caused by errors in childhood acquisition or phonetic pressures because of the shape of our vocal tracts and our mouths and stuff, or anything like that. It's literally words that we know. We know how to use them, we know what they mean, but we avoid them. We deform them. We replace them. If you're easily offended, I bet I'm going to hear all about it in the comments. I'm Dr. Taylor Jones, and this is about to be one heck of a frickin' video. This is Language Jones. Okay, so I'm something of an expert on taboo words, almost by accident. A lot of my research ends up relating to them in some way. I've co-authored a paper on the multiple uses and meanings of the N-word, more on that later, and I've published on the actually vernacular Black English intensifier, then a mug. This time AV is actually the right initialism. Links in the description, by the way. I've written about the euphemism treadmill, where one word is used to replace another in polite company, like toilet, and then becomes associated with the thing it refers to and becomes an impolite word that needs its own replacement, like bathroom, which then gets ruined and so on and so on. That's how I had a friend of mine recently tell me, scandalized, that in New York she had seen a man go to the bathroom on the street. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm also one of the few experts on what are called gibbon constructions, but I never got around to making a video about that because I'm pretty sure there's only so many words like twat waffle and cunt muffin you can say before you get demonetized. So I like spicy words, words that wake up your amygdala. But they come in different flavors. Let's get into this. But first, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment for the algorithm. Maybe leave me your favorite taboo replacement, especially if I don't mention it later in the video. A taboo word, put simply, is a word that exists in a language or language variety that a specific person or kind of person can't say. There are different reasons why this might be. It could be fear of supernatural repercussions. It could be social repercussions. It could be to show respect. It could be for politeness. It could be for impoliteness. Let's talk about these and then talk about how people avoid taboo words while still communicating what we want to. So in the supernatural realm, where I spend most of my time, linguistics is a gateway for the dark arts, as you all know. In the supernatural realm, there's a recurring pattern in languages where we might avoid talking about something we don't want to summon, like a bear or he who shall not be named. In fact, the word bear comes to us from an older word meaning the brown one. We know from historical linguistics that the Proto-Indo-European word for bear was urktos, or something similar, whence Arctic, and so on. But the northern branch of PIE languages had a hunter's taboo against naming wild animals, which is why you get names like brown dude in English, basically, Irish good calf, Welsh honey pig, Lithuanian the liquor, and Russian honey eater. You don't want to say the name and then actually summon one. You know, speak of the devil, and the full phrase is like speak of the devil and he'll come running. In French, it's mention a wolf. Anyway, then there's respect, or respect bordering on awe, bordering on abject terror. Within the ancient Israelite religion, only one person, the Kohen Gadol or high priest, could say the divine name, and only under certain circumstances. Once a year, only at the temple, only after various ritual conditions had been met. That name was replaced in Jewish liturgy with another word meaning my lord, which Jews generally do not say outside of a liturgical context. If not reciting a bracha or engaged in tefillah, a bad but common translation is making a blessing and praying, Jews don't say that replacement of the name either, and instead will say Hashem, which literally translates to the name. As a historical side note, when scribes added little dots to indicate vowels, they added the vowels that went with the replacement name to the letters for the name. Misunderstanding that, and adding a couple of cross-linguistic sound shifts where German represents the y sound that yud makes with a j, but English reads that j as a duh with affrication, ja, is how you get the word Jehovah, which I'd normally be careful about pronouncing, but we actually know that that is not the name. But for some, it's also subject to the same taboos. Or some others, which I'll talk about in a minute, which is how you get a name like Beelzebub. Religions are just a whole thing, and I'll come back to this when I talk about taboo avoidance strategies. Still on respect, there are some cultures that have practices that involve taboos, usually around things like saying your father-in-law's name. That's like weirdly common. One famous example in linguistics happened in Papua New Guinea, where a man violated a naming taboo in front of his father-in-law and then just fled to the mountains and allowed himself to be killed by a rival tribe. This stuff is intense. Zulu was not originally a click language, by the way, but it got its clicks, as far as we can tell, because of taboos like the father-in-law one. Opposite of respect is absolute derision and loathing. That's where you get dead naming and mocking names like Beelzebub. I promise I'll explain that one later. There's also social norms. I mentioned the N-word before. You'll notice I didn't say it. That's a word that in one language variety in the US is literally a pronoun. I mentioned pronouns, so those of you playing the home game, take a shot. It can be a first-person pronoun that does all the usual pronoun stuff, like co-refer with a noun or license an anaphor, like myself. And for the other 88% or so of the population, in the language variety they speak, it's a slur. It is so offensive that people won't even say the word when discussing it, but will only refer to it by its first letter, and it's the N-word. There are conferences in linguistics that talk about N-words, which are all about negation, but there's only one, the N-word. What this means is that whether you can say it depends on your fluency in one language variety versus another, and your identity, which you can't really change, as I keep trying to explain to Rachel. I have to use taboo deformation if I want to use it at all, and stick around because I have a way better one than the tired ninja. And lastly, there's euphemism, where we might not want to talk about something unpleasant or socially unacceptable, like dookie. That's most likely from deuce, by the way. You know, ace, deuce, number one, number two. So let's get into taboo avoidance strategies and all the fun words. One strategy, and this is legit, is just don't talk about it. In Yiddish, there's a handful of well-known euphemisms for the male organ. See what I did there? But famously, there's basically none for the female pudenda. I did it again! There's the makom, which is delightful to me because that's also a name for the divine. One is that place and the other is the omnipresent, but they're both the same Hebrew word. Another strategy is partial avoidance. There's now an intensifier in some informal varieties of African American English that's pronounced then a muh. It comes from the full comparative phrase then a muh. Nobody's comparing to women who've done you-know-what. They're comparing to the person doing the doing. But we leave off an entire word. Then there's euphemism, replacing with a word. That's how you get toilet, loo, potty, bathroom, washroom, restroom, powder room, small room, cool upper chamber for you fans of Judges. That's how you get number one, number two, the big one, the little one. Sometimes you can replace the word with another word from a different language, which is why you couldn't say cock on TV, but comedians used Yiddish euphemisms like schwanz, putz, kishka, schlang, schmuck, schmecky, and so on. These are all too offensive to use in regular Yiddish despite being euphemisms, but the FCC could not care less about their wholesale loan into English to get around censorship. Euphemism is also how you get a word like anti-Semitism, which was coined by a rabid anti-Semite to make Judenhass sound scientific and respectable. The problem with euphemism is what's called the euphemism treadmill. The moment everyone knows what an eggplant emoji means, we're basically going to have to start going to new things. Just like how now people are saying they're not anti-Semitic. It was originally the thing that you said that you were to prove that you didn't engage in Judenhass. Then there's actually deforming the word. This is how you get heck and gosh darned and dag nabbit and what in tarnation and frickin' and geez. If you like Shakespeare, exclamations like zoons are a partial deletion and deformation of a taboo Christians don't have anymore, I think. It's from God's wounds. Great moment to note that these taboos change over time. English didn't used to have any taboos whatsoever about scatological and sexual words. That's relatively new, which is why you have English place names like Ticklecock Bridge. They tried to rename it to Ticklecot, and the locals would not have it, by the way. Hard pivot. I've already mentioned the tetragrammaton. That's a Greek euphemism for the four-letter name. But sometimes, to distinguish that specific name from others for the same referent, observant Jews might use the taboo deformation, the Shem Havaya, which puts the letters in a different order. There's a taboo against pronouncing combinations of the components of it in order, and the taboo is strong enough that despite using letters as numbers for like forever, an important holiday falls on the 15th of Shvat, but while that should be the Yud for 10 and the Hey for 5, that would make part of the name, so it's Tu B'Shvat from 9 and 6, adding up to 15. I promised I'd talk about Beelzebub, by the way. That's a Europeanization of a deformation of a name for a Philistine god, Baal, meaning master, and Zvuv, meaning flies, the Lord of the Flies. Some of you are remembering high school English class right now. Here's the thing. This is most likely not the actual name of the deity, but rather something that sounded a bit like it, but made it about flies. You know, the things that circle Dookie. It was possibly Baal Zevul, Lord of the Heavenly Dwelling, but Then again, there's some evidence from Ugaritic that the Canaanite gods were actually associated with flies, at least some of them, and Dookie and whatever, so who knows? Those guys offered up their children to the Baal Ham, the Lord of Furnaces, so honestly, who knows what else they thought was totally cool. Partial taboo avoidance is also thought to be how Zulu, not historically a language with clicks, got its clicks. There's a whole practice called isiklonipa, which is politeness, and basically means you don't pronounce any words that start with the same syllable as your mother or father-in-law's name. So one way of doing that is borrowing a word from a neighboring Khoisan language. And voila, you've got words like ama-anda. Finally, there's outright replacement. In the Anglosphere, these come across as cutesy. That's your shut the front door, or when my friend stubs his toe and yells, mother father. These keep the same prosody, the same stress pattern, but give you different words, like forking shirt balls in The Good Place.
It's very obvious what the reigning champion is. It's soak my deck.
This is also how you get people who want to say the N-word, shouldn't say the N-word, but also know that the N-word ruins the prosody of what they're saying, so they'll say ninja. It's a word that's phonetically close to the desired word and refers to a person, but we all know you don't think I'm skilled in the mysterious arts of the Orient when you call me my ninja, just like nobody really thought that black folks are such big fans of Friends that they call each other Monica. Personally, I prefer neighbor, in part because it's accurate given where I live, and in part because it sounds like I'm some kind of old-timey traveler, and in part because you can say it with or without the hard R. So I can specify that he called somebody neighbor, but it was not with the hard R.
Please won't you be my neighbor?
This kind of taboo deformation can also be taken a step further with images rather than words. I don't know why the hateful people in my comments think that they're fooling anyone when they're posting comments with an emoji with a kite in it. It's not that clever. Anyway, this is a topic that I love. It's everywhere around us, and it's all about how we navigate the social world. But that navigation can give us a never-ending treadmill of euphemisms, new words, and even new sounds in our languages. And it all boils down to adults, not children learning the language, thinking strategically about how we want to be perceived and how we can achieve that with words. Please leave me that comment, by the way, with your favorite taboo avoidance. I want to give a special thank you to all my patrons. If you'd like to support the channel, you can do so on www.patreon.com/languagejones or right here on YouTube with super thanks and super chat. If you liked this video, YouTube thinks that you'll like this one, and it's basically their whole job to know these things. Until next time, don't say anything I wouldn't say.